Last night, the final German troops stationed in Afghanistan left the country. Later this week, the withdrawal of U.S. troops is expected to be completed, ending a mission that began almost 2 decades ago, a mission that became America's longest war. It was the 9/11 terror attacks in the U.S. in 2001 that prompted the U.S.-led mission in Afghanistan. The target, the Taliban, which controlled Afghanistan at the time and had given the 9/11 terrorists a place to plot their attacks. $2 trillion later and countless casualties among Afghan civilians and alliance forces. Can anyone claim mission accomplished? As the withdrawal ends, the Taliban is reclaiming territory quickly. The top U.S. general predicted a civil war could erupt within months, and that could spell doom for the fragile progress that was achieved under the protective umbrella of an alliance that is now going home.
For Peter Schwittek, Afghanistan is a home away from home. For more than 30 years, he and his wife Anna-Marie have been aid workers there, teaching children how to read and write and do maths. Both are disappointed with the international community's achievements. Civilian reconstruction should have begun at the administrative level. They should have put an administration in place and kept a close eye on what they did with all the funding. None of that was checked. They just kept throwing money at it, and when things didn't work out, they just threw more. The Schwitteks say children still don't learn enough at school, partly because international partners made mistakes on an organizational level, too. They built a lot. They built lots of schools. But no one cared what was happening inside them. It was all very rudimentary. Despite debate about whether the intervention of the international community was worthwhile, there have been marked improvements, especially in education. UNESCO say the number of kids enrolling in schools has risen clearly, but the education gap between rural and urban areas remains. There has been considerable progress at primary school level. It's estimated that half of all Afghans can now read and write. That was different 20 years ago. The same goes for educating girls. In the 1990s, under the Taliban, they got no education at all. Women were completely oppressed under the Taliban. Their situation remains precarious, but they have gained some rights. They can vote, join political movements, and go into business. But state-level corruption remains endemic. Transparency International ranks Afghanistan as one of the world's most corrupt countries. One reason why aid money doesn't always reach its intended destination. We have to acknowledge that the international community was not capable of laying down rules on how the money was to be spent. They never got around to introducing good governance or tackling corruption. The security situation remains dramatic. Now the Taliban is pushing to get back into power. It already has half the country under its control. That's why Anna-Marie and Peter Schwittek expect the situation in Afghanistan to stay just as it's always been, extremely unstable. I don't see any long-term peace. Unless the government reconciles with the Taliban and tries to get the country sorted out itself. Still, the couple plan to go back again soon. They say the people need their help now more than ever.
Well, my first guest tonight is Dr. Eleanor Zaino, the country director for Afghanistan at the German think tank, the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. She joins me from here in Berlin. It's good to have you on the day. I want to start by getting your opinion on this. We've been hearing all day from the German military that this was a mission accomplished in Afghanistan. Do you agree?
Well, I think we don't have accomplished all of our goals and expectations, and we have stayed below our expectations in many points. And we just heard about we don't have security for the Afghans in the country. We don't have basic infrastructure. In Kabul, we have only a few hours of water and electricity a day. And corruption fighting has not been successful. So in many points, we have not accomplished.
I understand that you are planning to return to Kabul in July. Does that trip now take on more risks and dangers for you personally now that U.S. and NATO forces have withdrawn?
Yes, of course, it takes more risk, and also it's completely unpredictable about the next weeks and months what we will see. And my security setup, of course, is much more safer than many Afghans have in Kabul or in Afghanistan. But it's unpredictable for all of us, and we don't know under what risks and under what conditions I will return to Kabul.
What do you say when you're back in Kabul if Afghans come up to you and say, Germany, the U.S. have abandoned us? What's your response?
Well, I say to them that I have always said to my Afghan partners and networks, I have always said, you don't have to wait. You cannot wait for an external savior. And an Afghan solution, a peaceful solution, can only come from inside, from the Afghans themselves. And I can only call on the international community also to place confidence in the Afghans that they can reach a peaceful settlement. But of course, there is no guarantee of success.
Yeah, and what's your feeling from the Afghans that you talk with in the country? I mean, is there any possibility that a peaceful resolution can be found with the Taliban?
Well, currently the mood is really shifting and people become much more pessimistic, and I can really feel the tension growing day by day and also the anxieties increasing day by day. And the problem is not only the Taliban, there's many armed groups in the country and many conflict parties to the conflict. And this is the difficult task of getting a negotiated settlement where all of the interests, the different interests, are kind of represented and also balanced. And so I think the Taliban, yes, they are now the dominating force, but there are many armed groups. And now we see a rearming of militias in the country, what I find quite worrying.
And that has to really spell doom for the future of women's rights in the country, or does it?
Yes, of course, it's women's rights, it's human rights, it's also the freedom of media, the freedom of press, the freedom of expression. So I see, particularly when we talk about women's rights and education, I see more the danger to an Islamization of education, of the public life, of public media. And this is the main threat that I see if we have a government in the future with the Taliban.
Eleanor Zeiner from the Konrad Adenauer Foundation. Dr. Zeiner, we appreciate your time tonight. We wish you all the best on your upcoming trip to Kabul. Stay safe.
Thank you.